I was about 4 hours early, and I sat up in the upper deck and I started writing away on yellow legal pads because unlike all of you, most of you I would assume, I don't know how to use a computer. So I went up there with my legal pads and I wrote away, and I thought it was good, but then again I've been hit in the head a lot, so I wasn't sure it was good. So I went down to the dressing room and I said, hey, would any of you guys like to hear what I wrote? A couple guys, yeah, sure. So they gathered around and I started reading this little story, and it was kind of goofy. And I'll tell you what, it was like being in the ring and getting reactions, because the two guys were laughing at the points where I wanted them to laugh. They were cringing at the points where I wanted them to cringe. And then more people started gathering around to see what all the fuss was about. Stone Cold broke into tears at just the point I wanted him to break. All right, maybe that didn't happen. But it became like an ongoing thing where we'd be on the plane and the wrestlers would want to read what I wrote. And I'd have 3 or 4 different guys, different sections of the plane, looking over my handwritten notes, struggling to decipher my handwriting, but laughing at the stuff that I'd written. And I'd see Stone Cold up in first class, and his back would be shaking. I was back there in 26C by the toilet, and Stone Cold was up there in first class. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences, and rewarding maybe particularly so because my career was coming to a close. As it turns out, like being thrown off the top of a 16-foot cell is not all that good for you. And it turns out that there's a price to pay, I think, for everything we do in life, but especially in my case for the risks I took when I was wrestling. And I realized that my career was coming to an end, and I was very fortunate because writing this book by hand, or I imagine to write it in any manner, brought me a particular sense of closure that most wrestlers and most performers will never have. It never dawned on me, and especially never dawned on the literary community, that people might actually buy this book. But buy it they did. It debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. It was seen as the biggest shock in the literary world since Howard Stern's book went to number 1 a decade earlier. It hit number 1 for one brief week. That's the highest, I guess, honor, well, besides big awards, Pulitzers and National Book Awards, but I haven't gotten any of those yet. And one of my prized possessions is that top 10 list, and what makes it especially prized is the fact that in the fall of 1999, the 2000 presidential candidates had their autobiographies out. And so the top 10 list, or actually it's a top 15 list, looks something like Al Gore at number 13, John McCain at number 11, Bill Bradley at number 7, Governor Bush, now President Bush, at number 4, the Dalai Lama at number 3, and on top of that list is a professional wrestler. And in what is either very ironic or downright scary, with the exception of Bill Bradley, the presidential candidates had their books ghostwritten for them, and the professional wrestler did it himself. Oh, thank you. Now, I know I have to close in a few minutes, so I'll just say from that point, I thought I was all tapped out on the Mick Foley stories. I managed to squeeze out enough for a sequel. Foley is good. And that book also did very well. It hit number 1 in its first week of publication. And for a while, everything I did, it was like I was striking gold. Christmas Chaos, hit number 4 on the children's bestseller list. Halloween Hijinks hit number 6. So I was really on a roll. I figured I had a novel coming out. Man, I'm going to become the first author in literary history to have New York Times bestsellers in children's, fiction, and nonfiction. Never mind the fact that there only been a children's bestseller list for 2 years. Nobody needed to know about that. I was going to be the first author in history. Except for the fact that nobody bought my novel. And then I came out with a children's book, Tales from Escalade, and nobody bought that one either. And here is the second little lesson I'd like you guys to learn, besides that one about the wrestling moves being an analogy for written words. I was proud of the novel. Hopefully you'll nod your head and say it was okay, right? Okay. Just so you know, here's the vision I had. This is when I realized I could write a book. Because I was able to look back to when I was 17. I actually lied. I had a girlfriend when I was was 17. I just want to make myself seem like a bigger loser than I actually was. And I remember the way I felt when I went on my first date. Hold on just like 2 minutes. My first date. And I tried to think back, and I tried to now use my character of Andy. And he goes through the same things. He goes to the movie, but instead of seeing First Blood, he sees First Blood 2, the Rambo movie. So it's a little bit different. And the girl holds his hand, and I'm trying to think, okay, what would really mess up that night for the kid? And so I had the idea that he walks in, he's still on this cloud, and he looks in his window, his front window, and he sees his father exercising naked. And then the father proceeds, and the father has this routine he does when every set of exercise he does, he has a deck of cards he turns. It's known as the doing the deck in wrestling lore. Whenever you're on a tour overseas, you can't hit the gym. Not that I ever hit the gym, but you turn the card, and if it was a 3, you'd do three free squats. And if it was a 10, then you'd do 10 push-ups. And you turn it over as a joker, you had to do 25. So during the course of this thing, you'd do hundreds of repetitions of each exercise. And my guy, my father, opted to take a huge swig of beer after each exercise he did. So he'd be pretty hammered by the time he finished the deck. Which was the case when the kid walks in and his father's all sweaty, he's naked, he's drunk. Father then wants to ask him all about how the thing went, the date. He's asking him, hey, did you get a little bit? And the kid's embarrassed. And then the dad kind of has a heart-to-heart. He says, well, that's not important. The important thing is you really like her. And the kid says, yeah. And then the father gives his son a big hug. The kid says, that's right, I hugged my sweaty, naked, drunk father. How many people can do that? But the book didn't sell. Neither did Rascal Lane. Maybe that's why it didn't sell. It was gross. But I knew that Rascal Lane was the best children's book I'd ever written. And I realized that, and I actually started taking a sense of pride in the fact that these books didn't sell, because it was more like a secret club. Like now when I see someone at a signing, let me give you a little heads up for those wrestling fans out there. You walk up to me and you say, hey, I love the Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker. I don't know how many more ways I can possibly answer that. Oh, that was a tough night at work. Yeah, because I've heard it so many times. But if someone walks up to me and they have a copy of my novel, or they've been to Santa's Village in New Hampshire, then I want to talk to them, because that's the type of thing that I'm really into. But I realized not only is it a little club and more exclusive and somehow more special, but this is another, I think you can extend this to life in general, besides reading specifically. I realized that you can't let other people dictate to you what being a success is. That definition is entirely up to me as a writer, you as aspiring writers, or all of you as people about to enter the world. I've seen that some of the greatest people in the world embark on careers that are not financially lucrative, but they're rewarding. And usually I don't go to schools like this. I was driving through these roads and I was going, wow, look at these houses. I thought I was doing good until I saw these houses. A lot of times I'm in tough schools, the Bronx and Harlem, and I see these teachers. Not that there's anything wrong with teaching here, but in a lot of cases I meet people who specifically, and then there's something very right about teaching in general and extending knowledge and hopefully inspiration to young people. I want to clear that up. But when I see people who choose to enter fields that they know are not going to pay off, but they do it because it feels right and because they believe in helping out a little bit, it really gives me inspiration. So I hope you'll take those lessons. 2 lessons, really, right? The rest of it was just a bunch of wrestling stories. Talk about a kid and his naked, drunk, sweaty father. But try to remember, it's not the number of words you know, but how you use the words you do know. And the second one is, it's up to you to define what being a success is all about. So hopefully, guys, thank you. I have 3 goals. I just want to know if I was successful. A, were a few of you inspired? B, were some of you amused? C, did all of you get out of class for a little while? Thanks a lot, and thank you for the great